going to be talking about note retraction, the unapproval workflow for notes, and then the re-import process. So some of this may be review for some of you, but again, like I said, you might discover some nuances or details of the processes you weren't aware of before. So let's go ahead and dive in, guys. So the first thing I want to talk through is note retraction. This is probably, again, something that's very familiar to a lot of you guys. So we're in this test database, test environment. Let me go ahead and let's filter down to one of our guys here, Johnny Cool. And let's look at some recent notes here that we've got. All right, so we've got our search grid. Again, should look very familiar to a lot of you guys, unless you're super new to OnTarget. But starting at the node search grid, let's take a look at some of these recently created notes. So first, just some filters, and again, this may be some review for some of you guys, but one of the very first things, let's just look at an unsigned note, or look for any unsigned notes. All right, so where this relates to the first topic of note retraction, okay, is that typically unsigned notes can't be retracted. Actually, not typically, just straight up, unsigned notes can't be retracted, and they should be just simply deleted out of the system. So again, that may be a review for some folks, but if you haven't heard that before, that's a great thing to keep in mind. So let's take a look at that first one. Let's see, on 210 here. And we can see that if we actually scroll over, staff sign date hasn't been signed, there's no billing approval, payroll approval. Now, there is a nuance here I'm going to talk about where that is not always indicative of the current state of the note. By the way, I maybe didn't mention this in the start. If you do have some questions that come up and you want to pop those into the chat, as we go along, we'll try to get to save some time toward the end for some Q&A, or I may kind of stop midway. But certainly as things come to your mind, you can pop those in the chat. So let's open up this first one, right? One of the very first things you can do too to verify this thing has never been signed, and I would just say this is best practice. Always check the note history tab. If you're not familiar with the note history tab, this is your friend for sure. Check on note history, and nowhere within this note can we see that it's ever been signed. Okay, so we should have zero problem. As I said, we actually can't retract this. We don't need to retract this. We're not trying to zero this out. We can just delete this one. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're just going to hit that trash can, wipe it out. We're good to go. All right, so that's kind of that first case scenario, right? And then we've got this situation where sometimes you need to retract a note, right? So this could be a case where maybe a note has been signed and approved. Maybe it has been signed. Maybe it's been signed and then unsigned. And that's actually the situation we have here with this note. I'm going to kind of demo this. So if we look at this note for 212, this was a CLS T2012 service code. And again, I've plugged in that filter that says all unsigned notes, and that is true. It is currently unsigned. That is the current state of the note. But what you'll find, and I'm sure you guys have seen this before if you've been using OnTarget for a while and you've done note retraction. If I tried to delete this note, I'm going to get this error, okay? So I've got a DMS document that's been created. So that basically means that there's sort of this stored PDF hard copy, a draft mode of this note because it got signed at some point. And again, if I open this note up and I go to my history tab and I kind of check on that, right? I can see very clearly right there, that's where it got signed. Here's where it got unsigned. So this is a prime example of a note. If I need to retract this note, if essentially, you know, to use the term zero it out or kind of null this note out for whatever reason, then I can retract this one. So one other process that you may have to throw into the mix, and I'll talk about this in just in the next iteration, and the next step is the unapproval process. You guys, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that as well. But this note right now being back in a work in process, I can simply retract this. Okay. If this were approved, I've got to first unapprove the note before I can do the retraction. So keep that in mind. If you want to take note on that, of course, I'm recording this. We will send that out after this session for sure. But just keep that in mind. If it's been approved, you got to unapprove it, and then you can complete that retraction. So this one happened to be unsigned. So I'll just kind of demo this. I'm just going to re-sign it actually. And so you kind of see, you know, I'm getting my standard warnings there, my validations, but even in a signed state, right? So if I flip my filters here and I go back to that 212, I can still retract this, right? So work in process or assigned, I can retract it if it's a work in process that has been unsigned. Let's qualify that, right? But I do have to unapprove it, get it to an unapproved state in order to retract. So right here, should be able to retract it. I'm going to get this message by retracting the note, et cetera, et cetera. And do you wish to continue? Yes, I do. I'm going to pop in that same password. I do get the option of putting in comments. So maybe, you know, again, note entered in error. Wrong service selected, maybe something like that. I hit OK. And there we go. I get that note retracted successfully. So I should then see that reflected here, essentially as a zeroed out note, right? So all that time has been zeroed out. And so those are the things to keep in mind. You've got these different states that notes can be in a status, right? Signed, approved, unapproved. So you really just kind of keep in mind where is it in the life cycle of the note, and that's gonna inform what you need to do with it. Do I simply delete it if I need to get rid of it as a supervisor? Do I need to retract it? Do I need to first unapprove it? All those good things. If you had any questions around that, certainly pop into the chat. I think that's pretty straightforward. The next thing is just the unapproval process. Do you want to just make sure, especially if you're kind of new, the unapproval process. Let's see. So if I go to signed and approved, we see we have a couple of those. We've got this one right here for 214. Let's just go ahead and open this one up. So again, this would be a perfect example where I actually need to, if I needed to retract this, kind of going back to note retraction, I would need to unapprove this first, right? But maybe you're not wanting to retract it. Maybe it's a note correction. And again, long timers have been using OnTarget. This is going to be super familiar to you, but any new folks, right? This is where you would unapprove, right? And this is an often missed step. You get this thing unapproved, and you really do want a task, right? You want to send it to that care provider, to that DSP, note has been unapproved. Please make corrections, right? So that's the kind of thing we're talking about. You just sent that message out to the DSP, to the note writer. They can then unsign that note, make the corrections that you've indicated, re-sign it. They want to let you know that they have made those corrections through a task as well, right here under the task tab, and then reapprove it if that's what needs to happen. One little nuance here too that's often missed is that you may potentially have to enter note super user mode if you have access to that. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're not the assigned supervisor on that particular note, but you do need to retract it, or you need to unapprove it, or you need to do anything with that note and you're not the listed supervisor, maybe you're filling in for somebody who's out sick. So that's where that super user mode comes in if you've got access to that. And you'll find that from options in the top right, and note super user mode, and that'll allow you to then get that note unapproved and or retracted. All right, let me just check the chat real quick. I think maybe we've got something here. Is the note still in the system after retracted? Absolutely, yes. Yeah, Heather said we will not delete that note from the system. Now a deletion, by all means, that's gone, right? You hit that trash can, that is going to be deleted. Otherwise, yeah, we're gonna retain that in the system. No problem. All right, guys, let's kind of keep moving. I think we just got a couple of more minutes here. Really, the last thing I want to go over, this is a big one, and this is kind of often missed. It's the note re-import process. Oh, Foster, I think, did you have a question? Let's see. Foster, I see your hands raised. Did you have, let me check the Q&A. Let's see. Foster, if you got a question, can you put that in the chat? I'm not sure if you got your hand, if that was by mistake, or yeah, if you're able to kind of access the chat. Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right, guys. So let's just kind of keep trucking along. So yeah, this last process, I call it the note re-import process. This one's going to be a little bit difficult to demo because we are in a demo database. And it looks like maybe something did come through the chat. I'll check that in just a little bit. It can be a little tough to actually demo because we are in a demo environment, but there's a re-import process that really kind of goes hand in hand with what we call time records. And if you've got some familiarity with time records, and again, we're probably crossing over into some billing type territory, but let's go ahead and kind of find those associated time records that are kind of connected to these same notes. So Johnny Cools here we're working with, and we know we're just going to look at any of those notes from 2-1. All right, so we've got a couple of time records. We've got some time records where there have been notes that have been signed and approved, right? Once a note gets signed and approved, typically a time record is going to get automatically created. That's usually the configuration. So what I want to show you is sort of this revision state, and just so you get a really good understanding of the revision state, but also the possibility that you may have to re-import a note into time records in order to get the note and the time record to sync in the event that there is a claim associated. So that's kind of a very specific scenario. And again, it's going to be a little tough to show you, so we might have to put our imagination hats on a little bit. But I do want to kind of show you this. When I go back to time records, let's look at the time record associated with that 218, right? And right now that looks good. It looks like it's kind of in an okay status. It's not showing up in blue. It's not in, if I scroll over here, a revision status. A revision status simply means that a note has been unapproved at some point, and really it's kind of in a holding pattern, right? The time record, we don't know how to resolve it. Right? We don't know, like, are you going to make a change to it? Are you going to try to retract this thing? Are you going to try to change the times? So it's really just kind of putting it on hold, if you will. So if we go back to notes, let's open up this note for 218. We have this note for some more community networking. And so I want to go ahead and actually unapprove this thing. And I'm going to go ahead and unsign it, right? I'm both the note writer and the supervisor at this point. So let me go ahead and just kind of unapprove it and unsign it. But what I'm going to do is, and again, put on sort of your imagination hat for just a second. I am going to say, well, I'm making a change to the time, because for whatever reason, Supervisor Sam, the caregiver, we billed out 6 hours. We created a claim for 6 hours of time, and it really should have been 5 hours, right? So we've got all of those kind of scenarios that happen all the time. And then I'm going to go ahead and save. And I will get that prompt that says, hey, do you want to go ahead and sign? Do you want to go ahead and approve? So right now, I'm not going to do that. But I want to go back to time records and refresh, and now you will see, just like I said, when a note gets unapproved, right? Anytime it gets unapproved, it's going to go really into one of two modes. It's either going to be a status of a revision, or some of you that are more familiar with time records, you may have seen a blocked status. Okay, blocked is kind of similar to revision. Blocked means there is a claim associated, but the reference number, right, that's associated with the 835 has not come back into on target yet. All right, so ultimately, and again, this is going to be a little bit challenging to actually show this, but let's just imagine that right now, this note right here for 218 had a claim number associated, okay? This got pushed out on an 837. We sent it out, let's say, last Tuesday, and it's still in this revision status. But in the meantime, we've realized, again, for whatever reason, this should have gone out for 5 hours instead of 6. Or maybe it should have been retracted, right? Maybe we selected the wrong service. Maybe for some reason, maybe an issue of fraud, whatever the case, the scenario may be, there has been a change on the note time that's actually impacting the associated claim. Okay, so let's just kind of throw that scenario out there, and that's exactly what we've got here. So when I go now, and again, I am both the caregiver and the approver. I'm going to go ahead and kind of do this all at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and select my password. And again, 5 hours instead of 6, right? Any of that detail that needs to be thrown in there. We had some validations that got thrown. And then typically, guys, if there's not a claim associated, again, we're going to kind of put our imagination hats on. It just drops right back out of revision status, okay? If there's not a claim. But let's just imagine for a second that there is a claim associated with that. This is where we talk about this re-import process. OnTarget will not automatically pull a time record out of revision status when there has been a time change on the note that impacts billing, and hence there is a claim associated with that time record. Okay? Even if I go to the note like I just did and I reapprove it, like we get it re-signed, we get it reapproved, this guy right here would still be in blue. It would still be in this revision and or blocked status, depending on where it is in the life cycle. It would be in a revision status if we came over here and we said, oh, this thing has been billed. This thing has a claim number associated. Because what we're looking for, again, this is impacting billing. This is impacting a claim. And so to trigger and to finalize the rebill process, which happens automatically when we do what I'm going to show you. And again, some of you guys are probably familiar with this, but if you're not, this might be new. To finalize the process, again, let's imagine that that time record is still in blue. It's in a revision status. And I'm trying to pull that out of revision status and trigger the automatic rebill to the payer. The way that I do that is by selecting the record here at Notes, click on Create Time Records, and then from Selected. And so you'll get this success that says Import to Actual Time Complete. What would happen is, again, imagine that was in blue. When I refresh, it's now clear. It's okay. It's been pulled out of revision status. It's 5 hours. But here's the nice thing, and this is that automated process. The claim that was associated with that, it just got essentially voided, resubmitted, and now it's right back out the door. And all of that happened automatically. All that happened without you having to touch batch billing or creating a claim. It basically just went right around all of that and created that new claim. And now it's going out the door. So that's something that does often get missed. And I think that's why that was probably the biggest, part of this session. Is that we see that that's a process. It's kind of a little nuance that gets missed a lot of the time. So definitely check those time records. Check for any that are in a revision status. And again, you can do that very quickly. If it's billing, for instance, if I kind of go here, there you go. Right, so that would be reflective of a note that is in a time record in a revision status as a result of a note change. There's a note associated, and that note has been unapproved, and there's a change that's been made. Right, so that's how you can kind of check on that. You got that really good filter right there. And that's, again, kind of in a nutshell, how you would pull that out of that revision status. Just to recap, we went over retraction and all the different scenarios there. Unapproval, reapproval of nodes, tasking, right? Making sure everybody's on the same page. Definitely check the note history. You can glean a lot of information from that. I think that's all we've got, guys. Let me see. Did we have anything in the chat here? Not seeing anything in the chat. Anybody have any other questions? Anything seem pretty straightforward? Okay, Jennifer, if a note is retracted for out of compliance issue, how do we get the blue out of the time clock records? Perfect. Yes. So that's it's the same process. So it's when you retract it, to finalize that retraction process, you're going back to the note, the source, and you're going to click on that create time records, and that will pull it out of that blue revision status. So it serves two purposes. It will trigger a rebill if there's a rebill, but if it's a retraction, which could potentially be a payback, right? If there's a claim associated, it's going to do the same thing. Same process. Good question. This comes from Devin. Is there any way to get notes out of the dashboard under the unsigned, unapproved notes? I know you can retract notes and approve them for billing and payroll, but then if we needed to look up information about that note in the future, it will be zeroed out. Oh, I gotcha. So like, just so it's not kind of stagnant, like it's just kind of always there, staying there under. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, unfortunately, right now, Devin, there's not. I think that would require some sort of enhancement with like filtering at the dashboard based on maybe status or based on date range or something like that. Yeah, but if you do pretty heavily rely on the notes dashboard, you're gonna kind of see some of that leftover. I hate to say garbage, but you're gonna see some of that leftover information from retractions. Lauren, what do we got here? Dan, what was the most critical action item folks should take after today's call? Query notes and revision block status to see if there's any revenue opportunity out there. Yes, absolutely. So let me bounce back in there just real quick, Lauren. Good point. It's really here at time records, right? And again, it's using that billing status of revision. You can do this in two ways. You can say, let me go straight to time records. Maybe, again, maybe plug in a date range, right? Maybe kind of go back 90 days. If you want to dig in for a particular client, let me just kind of go back here. I'm sure we've got some test data going way back. So yeah, again, this would be free game. This would be information that I would want to further investigate, and I would want to go back to the note and kind of see what's going on, right? These notes have not been approved. If they need to be approved or if they need to be retracted, that's where I would be doing that work, right? One other thing, and I don't think I showed you guys this, you can always see at the notes search grid the status that's reflected in time records. So if I go to actual time status and I click on revision, right? So let me just kind of, again, I don't want to pull too much data back here, but there we go. There's that one record that is still in that revision status. Yeah, I probably don't have too much yet. There we go. We don't have a ton. But yeah, that's a perfect example of how you could say, let me see notes where there are time records associated. So I'm going right to the source. Notes where there are time records associated that currently have a time record that are in a revision status. And so again, you may have to kind of dig into the details. Have they been re-signed? Have they been reapproved? You know, kind of what's going on there.